Hi everyone, how are you? I'm back making videos regularly this week, and today we're going to talk about icy dolls. So there's always a lot of confusion about the icy doll. Is she Blythe? Is she sort of a copy of Blythe? And while she is very, very similar to Blythe, she has the same eye mechanism type system with the eyes, which is sort of like the trademark Blythe feature. Her mold is not the same as Blythe. She has more almond-shaped eyes that kind of come to a point here. Her lips are very different, and to me, her cheeks look fuller. She almost looks chubbier to me. If we compare her to a Blythe doll, you can see there's quite a difference. The Blythe has a pretty pointy nose, and she has more of a flat nose. The Blythe lips are a little bit fuller with plastic, and the icy not as much. And of course, the Blythe doesn't have those almond-shaped eyes. The icy also has a ridge, like an eyelid type ridge under there that's different from Blythe. However, they're pretty similar, and customizing them is basically the same. The only difference that I have found, and I've only customized one icy, I'll put the photo of mine in here. The one thing that I've noticed is that the eye chips are slightly smaller than Blythe. So we're going to take them out, we're going to take an icy apart and sort of look at any differences we find. The ears are different shape. Let's look at the Blythe again. See the difference in the ears. Now this is a fake Blythe, and so she has a hole for the earring. Most of the fakes have that, as far as I know. All of them do, and you can find authentic dolls that don't have that. The icy doesn't. She doesn't have the hole. If we look at the back, again, very similar. Scalps, the hair should be interchangeable between the icies and Blythe, so that's nice. If you want to interchange the scalp to a Blythe doll, or you have a Blythe doll that you want to put that scalp on your icy, it should fit. But again, the big difference is the eyes. They are slightly smaller. So Blythe takes 14mm eyes, and the icy takes, it's like around 3.5. So I have eye chips in 14mm, and I have eye chips in 13mm, and neither of them fit perfectly. The 14s are a little too large, and the 13s are a little too small. So because I make my own eye chips, I'm able to print them out correctly and cut them slightly smaller. If you don't make your own eye chips, there are a couple of options that I'm going to tell you about. So we're going to take apart this icy. I'm actually going to keep this doll and keep her mechanism so that I can now make eyes for customers that need someone to make them the correct size eye chips. That way I can make them and test them and make sure they're exactly the right size. These other dolls are going to be in my shop, hopefully later today. So if you're interested, they're a little bit less expensive than Blythe dolls, so they're a great way to get started customizing dolls if you want to start on a less expensive kind of option. The process is basically the same, but these are a little less expensive. So these pretty ones that just look like an Easter basket to me are going to be in the shop later, and this one is going to stay here with me to help me make eye chips for people. So let's take her apart. Instead of a pull ring like Blythe has, they come with this little charm that says Angela. I'm not really sure where the Angela comes from, because if you find these dolls listed anywhere, they're listed as icy. I do not know their history. There may be somebody watching that knows more about these dolls, where they started and where they came from, that can fill us in, but I do not know. So it's possible maybe she was named, can you even see that? that she was named Angela or something. I don't know. But in general, we call them icy dolls. So, options for eye chips for your icy doll. You can either buy eye chips from me in the correct size, and those will be resin eye chips. I'm hoping to add them as an option to my listings over the next week. If you need them before you see them as an option, you can message me on Etsy or wherever you can get a hold of me and ask. Most likely it's only going to be an option for my new listings because, as I've mentioned before, and I heard my washing machine just decide to come on. As I've mentioned before, I am now designing my own chips, and so I have listings in my shop that will be expiring. The old chips will be, once they expire, they won't be back. So the option will probably only be on the new designs I have. So if you're interested in other ones, just message me. Your other option is, if you want to use the chips you already have, is that you can enlarge the eye mechanism's hole with a Dremel tool. So as you can see, very similar inside. And the way that you enlarge the eye hole is basically you're going to use your Dremel tool to very carefully go around the inside of the white part once the eye chip is removed, enlarging that hole. Unless you feel super comfortable with a Dremel or customizing in general, I don't super recommend that, just because you can easily let the Dremel get away from you, and then you might have an eye hole that is too large or misshapen or whatever. So be careful when you do that. So here's the scalp. Looks just like an RBL scalp for a Blythe doll. So I'll probably list this gorgeous scalp in my shop because I'm not going to use it. Here is our faceplate. So just be careful if you decide to enlarge. So the other option is to cut your eye chips, or reduce the size of your eye chips. So if you have plastic eye chips, you also could Dremel around the outside of the eye chip, making it slightly smaller so that it will fit in the hole. That again leaves you with the chance of ruining your eye chip. So I would be really careful doing that. If you have soft resin chips, like the ones that I sell in my shop, you also could cut them smaller. Give me 1 second to check on what in the heck my washing machine's doing. I started my washing machine, which I always end up doing and then want to do a video, and it's so loud, so I had turned it off and it just decided to start itself back up. Okay, so taking it out is just basically the same as you would with a Blythe doll. You have to take the T-bar off, etc., and pop it out. Now you have your faceplate for your icy. One of the differences is because the mouth doesn't have as much plastic like the Blythe doll, and when you look on this side, you can see that the nose is slightly hollow as well as the mouth. So one of the downfalls of working on an icy is you risk going through the plastic much more easily than you would on a Blythe doll. So that is the one thing I would be very careful, if you're not doing an open mouth, to be very cautious of carving too much and carving through. Great for an open mouth, that's what I did on mine, and or anything where you're not taking away a lot of plastic. So just be careful there. Repairing these types of holes is not fun. So here is our mechanism, and let's take out one of these chips and I'll show you the size difference. Okay, so at first go, these seem like they're in there really, really good. So I don't know if this is common for ices or if I just got one that has really hard to get out eye chips. So what we're gonna have to do is probably soak them. I didn't really want to have to make this video take a couple days, so I think we'll try again on a different chip. At least if we could get one out, we can at least look at the difference. But if not, we will have to soak the mechanism. As I always say in all my videos, soaking usually solves 90% of the issues. So let's try again with this one. Maybe we can at least get one out. All right, let's give it one last shot here. I don't think it's gonna happen. Okay, so off to soak in hot soapy water. Probably gonna take at least a day, but there's no choice. The only other choice when you have eye chips that won't come out with the glue stick, step one is to try soaking, because most of the time it's a glue that's holding them down that just needs to be loosened. If that doesn't work, the extreme is basically hammering a screw or a nail into the chip and popping it out. I don't recommend that as a first step. That is kind of a last resort because it's dangerous. It can ruin the mechanism, and a lot of times you end up having to take it out piece by piece, and it's just a lot of work and a big mess. So I don't recommend starting there. So let's soak it and we'll come back and see if we can get these out. Okay, so it's the next day. I soaked the eye mechanism just for a couple hours yesterday and then tested it again, and they came right out. So I highly recommend always soaking if you have any issues like that, because usually it resolves very easily. So now I've got the two eye chips out, and I just want to show you what I was talking about as far as size. So this is a pair of 13mm eye chips that fit pull-up dolls, and you'll see that they are too small. So they just kind of swim around in there. So the 13 is too small. And then I have a pair here of 14mm, so the normal regular Blythe eye chips, and you can see they don't fit. They're just slightly too big. So the icy chips are what I would say about 13.5, and the way that I do it is I just print the artwork slightly smaller and then use the 14mm resin and then trim it down to the right size to make them look good. So if you have an icy doll and you need chips for it, again, your options are you can now buy them from me in my shop. They will come ready to insert with no extra work. Or, as I said, if you have a Dremel tool, you can use your Dremel tool to enlarge slightly the eye socket of the doll. You just want to be really careful that you don't nick it or maybe make this side larger than this, because it's hard to keep a good circle. So that's an option. Or if you buy resin chips from somewhere else, you can trim around, but you might lose some of the artwork. If you have plastic chips, or I don't think you could do it with glass, but if you have the plastic 14mm Blythe chips, you also could sand around the chip and make it smaller. So those are kind of your options with icy. This is sort of the reason why I wanted to now offer them in my shop, so that people have an easy option. So if you're interested, I'll put a link below to my shop where you can find them. They're not there yet. I will probably be updating them in the next day or two. They might already be there by the time you see this video. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.